We're here to hit on the biggest headlines heading into National Signing Day on Wednesday. This is the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Josh Newberg. The countdown to signing day is on. Let's bring on Director of Recruiting for On3, Chad Simmons. Chad, there's 4 players in the top 100 still uncommitted that we are watching. Duce Robinson, Nyckoles Harbor, Jaden, Rashada, and Rodrick Pleasant. Let's start with Nyckoles Harbor, though. He's the #1 athlete in America, 5-star prospect, and he was in Oregon for an official visit over the weekend. What are you hearing coming out of that trip?
Yes, the things are starting to kind of come out from obviously that visit, a big, huge visit. Oregon got in there a little bit later than other schools on his list, but got that last and sometimes coveted official visit that schools want to get just days before signing day. So obviously it's been positive so far. Again, it's very early. Things are just starting to get out. I haven't talked to too many sources yet with the full intel, but again, things supposedly I was told by one, they brought out the big guns this weekend in Eugene to try to lure Nyckoles Harbor to Oregon.
Yeah, that could mean a lot of things. But one thing that I know that they're trying to make a big impression on is track. And his ability to be maybe a potential Olympian down the road. How much does this play into his decision?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, that's his ultimate dream, is to run in the Olympics, So people have always tried to figure out which one weighs heavier. Is it football or track? And obviously he speaks highly on both. He wants to do both. But I think if it really came down to it, track may weigh out a little bit heavier because that's his ultimate goal, is to be one of the best in the world in track and field. So track does play a big factor in this decision.
Do you think that helps Oregon's momentum now that we're 2-3 days from signing day?
I think multiple things help. Obviously, their track and what they do in track and field, their brand of Nike, obviously getting the last final official visit with him and his family. So I think numerous things factor into this and kind of help Oregon make that late push and try to grab which is key, that late momentum and pull ahead of those schools like Michigan and South Carolina and Maryland and Miami. So, I think the track and getting him on campus late do help the Oregon Ducks.
Now, when looking at the recruiting prediction machine, it shows that South Carolina has the edge. Are you buying that right now, or do you think that maybe the field? Would you take the field right now?
Probably if I'm being safe, probably just take the field because multiple schools still feel fairly optimistic based on my intel that they still have a legit shot to sign this young man in a couple of days, So I think it starts at home in his backyard at Maryland. Obviously you mentioned South Carolina. Michigan's long been considered a top 1 or top 2 school in this race. And Miami, I'm told again, cannot be slept on completely in this race. And then you have Oregon. He was just there yesterday. So multiple schools are still involved. So I would probably lean towards taking the field if I had to take one of the two.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that the rumors are going to be swirling over the next 48 hours as Nyckoles Harbor closes in on a decision. Let's move to 4-star cornerback Rodrick Pleasant, though. He's the top uncommitted corner in the country. Now, the Ducks are also involved with him. Is track enough to pull him out of California, where USC seems to be the favorite?
Yeah, track's a factor there, too. I mean, obviously, USC's in his backyard. His brother, Dominic Davis, played football at USC as well. He's been there numerous times, too many times to count. He knows so many players that USC signed in this class. So a lot of things seem to trend towards USC. But I talked to a close source late last night on Sunday, and Oregon still feels they're very much in this race. They definitely haven't raised the white flag and they haven't thrown in the towel and given up. They're still in communication with Pleasant. Based on what I'm hearing early on Monday, he has told neither school, yes, I'm coming, or no, I'm not coming. So both schools are still going hard after Rodrick Pleasant. But yes, track will factor in this. But right now it seems to be trending towards USC slightly based on what I'm hearing.
And Oregon just keeps on swinging. They lose Dante Moore late. They are not able to finish the deal with Peyton Bowen, but in the end, they're still fighting, and they have 2 top 100 prospects on the board as we close into the final 48 hours before signing day. All right. Now let's move on to 4-star quarterback Jaden Rashada. Everybody knows that the former UF signee opted out of his NLI. He's back on the market. He's visited Arizona State. He was at TCU this past weekend. Chad, what's the latest intel when it comes to Jaden Rashada?
I think it's a couple of things, Josh. Number one, will he sign this week? Number two, if he does, who does he sign with? I think both of those questions are still to be determined. I
Hmm.
think based on what I was told over the weekend and late Sunday night is, once from two different sources. One source said that they think he's likely to sign this week. One said 50-50 at best. So I think there's still, obviously discussions being going on, whether it be inside the Rashada camp, him with multiple college coaches to figure out when does he want to sign and does he know where he wants to go? I think there's no doubt the best connection relationship that Rashada has is with Kenny Dillingham, the head coach at Arizona State, going back to his time when he was the OC at Oregon, when they were in and among his top schools. They have a great connection there. His brother also is in Arizona. Then you have TCU, a little bit more involved in the NIL, obviously played in the college football playoff this season, but kind of lacks that connection based on one source telling me that he met Sonny Dykes, but there's no real connection, no real relationship with the head coach at TCU. So maybe he needs more time to see how that evolves for a few weeks before he makes that final decision. But if it's based on relationships, it seems to trend towards Dillingham and ASU right now. But there's much more to this, as we all know, with Jaden Rashada.
So if he does make his decision in 3 days on February 1st, do you think that this is a two-team battle?
Yeah, it seems to be going that direction. If he does decide this week, I mean, Cal's been in this, Washington, Colorado's made calls, other schools like Nebraska have made calls, but it seems like if this goes down in a couple of days on February 1st, it seems like it will be Arizona State or TCU.
All right, moving on to Duce Robinson, 5-star tight end, the number one tight end in the nation out of Arizona. Were you able to confirm his visit to Athens this past weekend? Did he make it in?
Yeah, I was able to confirm he did not make it in. I think based on, they had things set, and I think the plan was in place for him to get from Phoenix across the country to Athens. But from what I was told, he was just too tired, man. Coming off a week in Hawaii, Polynesian Bowl. He had a workout with the LA Dodgers right before that. He had baseball experts in his home last week, college coaches in his home last week. And I think it just came down to, hey, I've seen what I need to see. I've talked to who I need to talk to. My decision's pretty much made. And I just decided to stay home and get some rest before this signing day.
So the recruiting prediction machine shows Georgia trending heavily over the past week. Does this lack of visit to Athens give some optimism to programs like USC and Texas heading into signing day?
Yeah, I don't think so, Josh. I mean, he's been to Athens, multiple times like he has to USC. I think Texas is out. I think it's USC and Georgia. Early on, the momentum was around USC. Again, he's close with guys like Malachi Nelson, Zachariah Branch. His teammate Elijah Page signed with USC in December. So there's multiple connections there. Obviously, it's closer to home as well. Phoenix to LA, easy flight. You could actually drive there if you needed to. Compared to Athens, but I still like where Georgia's at. And since he took that official visit to Georgia mid-season, the momentum on my side has been around Kirby Smart's program in Athens, Georgia. Just the tight end production, the connection with Todd Hartley. Georgia got the final in-home with Duce Robinson on the same day as USC got theirs. And I've been hearing nothing to change my mind about where Georgia stands as a front runner.
Man, and this would be Georgia's 5th 5-star recruit in this class. And if Bama doesn't go all Bama on us and sign 7 5-stars this year, we're likely talking about Georgia running away with the number one class in America. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, this is a class that I think Kirby, with if they land Duce and kind of just almost like the cherry on top of this already elite class with a couple other elite tight ends in this class as well with Pierce Spurlin and Lawson Lucky. But yet Georgia's class really checks the boxes. They meet their needs. They got the O tackles. They got some playmakers at tight end and wide receiver. A great class again by Kirby Smart.
All right. Well, the focus is heavily on 2023 on this edition of the Inside Scoop, but we got to talk a little bit of 2024, especially when the number one player in America, the number one overall QB, Dylan Raiola, was on campus at USC this weekend. And Chad Simmons, you were able to talk to him as he exited. What did you learn when you spoke with Dylan Raiola on Sunday?
Look, man, he loved his time with Lincoln Riley, and not just him, but his dad, his mom, his brother. I mean, I think Dylan was there. He said roughly 4.5 to 5 hours on Saturday in between quarterback training sessions. He said Lincoln Riley did not leave his side for 30 seconds. He was with him, photo shoot, outside, on the field, film room, in the office, grabbing a snack. He was just right there with him. And that meant a lot, not just to Dylan, but the mom, the dad, the family. USC was in this before he committed to Ohio State, maybe even the number 2 team when he made that decision. And at one time, they were the front runner a year ago. Could they be back to that? They're definitely up there, with Nebraska, Georgia, some other schools. But USC made a big, big impression on that Raiola family this weekend.
What is the group of teams that you think are the main competition right now for Dylan Raiola?
Yeah, I think I mentioned basically just those 3. I think obviously Oregon, I think is a school trying to get him on campus. He may visit there once visits open back up in March, maybe there in March or April. But I think right now there's 3 schools to watch. That's Georgia, the very first school to offer Raiola, Nebraska, where his dad played, a living legend in Lincoln, Nebraska. His uncle's an O-line coach there now. And then, of course, USC, where Lincoln Riley's track record with developing quarterbacks definitely can't be argued as putting them guys into the Heisman race, first-round draft picks, success in the NFL. We see Jalen Hurts now playing for the Super Bowl championship in the NFL. He's a pupil of Lincoln Riley. So I think those are the main 3. Oregon kind of on the outside. We'll see. Other schools have tried to jump in there, Oklahoma, Michigan. Other schools have come by the school. But right now I see 3 schools kind of fighting for Raiola, and that's Georgia, Nebraska, and USC.
How much will NIL opportunities play into Raiola's final decision?
Well, they've made the statement, at least the dad, multiple times, that that's not a factor. Obviously it's a plus. He wants to be a guy that can market himself and become, a big name quarterback in the business world and the financial side of things for sure. But in the end, it's going to come down to where he feels he can be developed best and put in to be successful, not just a quarterback, but as a team to win championships, compete at the highest level. And, a big plus for USC in this is he's now started training with a guy in LA, QB3D. He'll be there multiple times a month. That's 25 minutes from USC's campus. Every time he's there training, if I'm Lincoln Riley or one of his GAs, one of his recruiting assistants, I'm making sure Dylan is on my campus every time he's there when that's allowed for visits. So keep an eye on just how many times. We always say follow the visits. Let's see how many times he ends up at USC in the coming months.
Yeah, I think that's really important. The access to get him on campus. He's training 25 minutes away. I mean, hey, if he starts trending to another program, USC, Lincoln Riley, like you said, if they're smart, they're going to get him back on campus, show him all about USC, why he fell in love with USC in the first place. So that could be something that's very vital for the Trojans heading down the stretch. But what's next for Dylan Raiola? Who's the next program that's going to host him on a visit?
I think you'll see both Georgia and Nebraska at least get him on campus in March. I can see him being at a spring practice at both schools. He's talked about trying to figure out which spring games he can get to, what his schedule allows, who's playing, if they're playing on the same day at different times. But I do know Georgia and Nebraska are definitely going to be on his calendar early once visits open back up again in March, depending on when they start practicing and, again, his schedule. But, again, he'll be training with, QB3D multiple times a month. So you can bet he'll be back at USC in the spring as well.
All right. Well, Chad, thanks for checking in with us on the Inside Scoop and dropping that Dylan Raiola intel.
Anytime. Thanks, Josh.
The countdown to 2023 signing day is on, but coaches across the country have been focused on 2024 recruiting, hosting junior days from coast to coast. And in Boulder, Colorado this weekend, maybe the biggest junior day of them all. Deion Sanders and the Buffaloes had an elite group on campus. Here's a look at some of the top 100 recruits that were at Colorado's junior day. You see Ryan Wingo from St. Louis, Brandon Baker from California. You had guys coming in from all over the country. Also in attendance on 300 recruits, Kalen Fox from Georgia, Defensive lineman Duce Robinson from Florida. Athlete Ju'Juan Johnson came from Louisiana. And Boo Carter came in from Chattanooga, Tennessee. I want to bring in national recruiting analyst Sam Spiegelman right now to talk a little bit about this. Sam, Colorado generally recruits the Pac-12 recruiting footprint, which is, Colorado, California, Arizona, Texas. But seeing guys coming from Chattanooga, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, does this kind of tell you what Deion's on in 2024?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. Sure, they recruit the Pac-12 territories, and they even have traditionally dipped into the state of Texas. Laviska Shenault is a DeSoto kid from Dallas, from South Georgia, from Michigan, from all over the country, flood to Boulder for one of the bigger junior country. We're talking about on 300, top 100, 2024, the 2025 classes in the same light that we're talking about Clemson and Alabama and their junior days, and Oklahoma, some of the bigger junior days across the country. I think that in itself speaks volumes about, one, the coaching staff that Deion has assembled. They have roots all over the country, and the staff above them. He plucked personnel guys from SEC territory, SEC programs. He put together a staff to recruit nationally. He has ties all over the place. His staff has ties all over the place, and now he has a department and a program that has national interest, and it's showing on the recruiting trail this weekend.
Yeah, look at some of the guys that they're getting on campus already. The Buffaloes are no longer playing catch-up anymore. When Deion Sanders arrived in Boulder, he only had about 24 hours to recruit that final weekend before the early signing period to finish the 2023 class. Now, he did help the Buffaloes move up about 30 spots. Now, in 2024, though, my question to you is, are the expectations set a little bit higher? Does Deion need to land a top 20 class? Is a top 15 class even within range for him this year?
Yeah, I think that 15 to 20 range is right in the sweet spot for Deion. We saw him close strongly in very limited time last cycle. I mean, he got Cormani McClain, which is a big 5-star pull from Florida, committed to Miami of all places. He's done this before. He's pairing Cormani and Travis Hunter in his secondary. He's bringing blue chip players to campus. Will he land every single kid that he brings to Boulder? Absolutely not. But if he starts hitting on a few, that's really where the foundation starts to being built. And factor that with, if they have some success on the field like they did have at Jackson State, if the Deion Sanders model works at Colorado, that's going to only help them close stronger 10, 11 months from now for the early signing period. I think a top 20 is probably the expectation in terms of classes. And if he exceeds that, I don't think any of us are going to be surprised.
Yeah, I don't expect to see Deion land half of these prospects that he's getting on campus, but if he can get in and land maybe 5-10% of some of the 4- and 5-star recruits that he's getting on campus, I mean, that's how you land a top 15 class. It's a numbers game. You got to bring in a lot of guys in order to get the few that you really want. So one of those guys was Ryan Wingo, the number 18 player overall, wide receiver. And he told Chad Simmons after the trip that it went beyond his expectations. And that's something that you hear consistently from guys that are making their first visit to Boulder. So I want to ask you, a prospect that's in your area out of Louisiana, Ju'Juan Johnson. He visited LSU and Colorado in the same weekend because he's closing in on a decision. Do you think that this visit to Colorado will impact his upcoming decision?
Hey, if you were out in Boulder, Colorado for that snowfall this past weekend and you had Deion Sanders, telling you that he wants to coach you up as you as a future defensive back, it moved the needle from what I understand. The reaction that I got, that Deion Sanders equates to greatness, which is, in context, is the same conversation that you hear about with Nick Saban when he talks to kids, and now Kirby Smart in that same light. So as Ju'Juan Johnson moves toward a decision, he's visited LSU quite a bit, probably more than most, considering where he's from. He's now been to Boulder. He's also been to Texas and Florida. He's going to have a Colorado hat on the table. Right now, the RPM favors LSU. I think that they are the team to beat, but he's made these visits for a reason. He wanted to explore the world, and Deion Sanders and the ties to that staff. Former people at LSU are now working at Colorado, and I think that they're definitely going to be considered moving forward as he moves closer and closer. And I think that's kind of the sense that we're going to get with a lot of these on 300 kids after they visit Boulder and considering Colorado moving forward.
Yeah, and I don't think this was just a novelty weekend. I actually think that this big visit weekend for Colorado kind of sets the tone for what they're going to do in 2024. They're going to have big visit weekends every month, every other week. I mean, there's going to be guys that are coming to Boulder, Colorado that we don't expect. So I'm fired up to see what Deion and the Buffaloes can do in 2024. Now let's move on to 5-star 2024 defensive lineman David Stone. He's the number 9 overall prospect in America and the number 1 defensive lineman. He took back-to-back visits to Michigan State. This past weekend and the weekend before, he was there checking out the Spartans. This time he brought mom, wanted to get more familiar with the coaching staff. Now, you've been pretty adamant that you think he was going to end up back at home with the Oklahoma Sooners, but you put in an RPM over the weekend. Where do you think David Stone's headed now?
Yeah, Oklahoma was trending on the RPM, but I've since updated that pick in favor of the Spartans. Like you mentioned, he's been to East Lansing twice this month. Why that's significant? Marco Coleman, the defensive line coach for Michigan State, has since taken that same role at Georgia Tech, his alma mater. That kind of piqued David Stone's interest in Georgia Tech, but he's since been back to Michigan State with his family, getting a closer look at Mel Tucker and what he's building there. He's been there during the season. I think that they just have momentum right now. Oklahoma is not out of this. Every time he's an Oklahoma kid, originally from Del City, one of the early offers for Brent Venables and his defensive line-minded staff there in Norman as well. And don't discount Ohio State as well. But at the moment, I think these back-to-back visits have put Michigan State in a good spot. And I don't think a decision is too far off. He's going to make a few more visits. And then I think Michigan State is still the team that's trending, at least at the time present.
I'm surprised you're changing your RPM to Michigan State. Not because I don't feel like that's where the momentum's going, but we've seen this play out. I mean, look at 2023. Oklahoma's not given up. Look at what they did with Peyton Bowen. You know, they ended up getting Peyton Bowen, even though he was committed to Notre Dame. Even when he flipped to Oregon, Oklahoma never gave up. So do you think that this will be another situation where maybe a Oklahoma favorite hometown kid goes to Michigan State, but it's 10, 11 months to go? Do you think that Oklahoma's going to give up if he commits to Michigan State?
Oh, I don't think Brent Venables will stop recruiting him, but we've seen this, By Job is a kid from Oklahoma. He goes to Norman Community High School right there outside of Oklahoma's campus, and he signed with Mel Tucker and the Spartans. It's very unique because Brent Venables and his staff are not recruiting poorly by any means. They're recruiting at a very top 10 class level, and then they're only going to go up depending on if the play on the field can catch up. But they are having their battles with local kids. You can count David Stone as that, being from Oklahoma City. You can count Xavier Sims, who from Durant, Oklahoma, who I also have an RPM for Michigan State, and I think Michigan State is trending for him as well. So just exceptions to the rule, I guess. But you're not wrong. I don't think that they'll stop recruiting him.
All right. Well, we got to see if David Stone takes another trip to Oklahoma. Do you think he takes another trip to Oklahoma before he decides?
At this point, that seems up to him. It's not on the list for him to get back to. I think he's been to Oklahoma probably as much or more than any other school. Mm-hmm. But he's wanting to check a few more boxes. That Ohio State offer, I was told, moved the needle. He's had interest in Miami. That's kind of local for him now that he's at IMG. And LSU was a school that, kind of caught his interest when he was an underclassman from Oklahoma. So those are 3 more, and A&M also recently offered him. And obviously they've recruited the best defensive lineman under Elijah Robinson the last few cycles. But I think it's those original 3 I brought up, Michigan State, Oklahoma, and Ohio State. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm not doubting that a decision might not be coming soon. I'm just doubting that this is the end of his recruitment. So we'll see what happens. But Sam Spiegelman, thank you for joining the Inside Scoop. We'll see you soon. Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me. And remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.